Welcome to the third top tips video. If you haven't seen the other two yet, you're missing a treat. Go and have a look on the Comforte YouTube site. You can catch up with those. There's no need to watch them in order though. In this third video we're going to look at file and folder comparison and merging. So this is in Guardian or in OSS, where you have one or more files. They correspond to each other in some way and you may want to merge the results of them together. There may be a number of different reasons you want to do this. You may be a developer and you've taken on board some third-party software that you want to merge into your already customized third-party software. You may be doing code reviews and you want to compare the current version of a piece of software with the previous version. You may be in a multi-server environment and you want to compare the configuration files on one server with the configuration files in another server. Of course, you can do this using green screen functionality, so there are 65/30 comparison tools that operate on the normal 80-column 65/30 terminal. They give a nice side-by-side layout quite often, so you can see which line corresponds to which in each file. Usually there's some kind of summary at the end to say how many files were added, changed or deleted. There are two key problems here. One, you're limited to the size of the screen, so you don't have that flexibility that you expect in Windows. You're limited to 80 columns wide, so text tends to be truncated or wrapped. And secondly, once you've got the comparison output, you can see where the changes are. It's then quite hard to actually go and make the changes. You need to edit the files. You're going to edit two files at once possibly, or view one file and edit the other, and then you want to move changes code from one side to the other and possibly edit that change as well. Now I'm going to look at some Windows based tools. The first program I'll look at is a program called ExamDiff Pro. It's a commercial tool. You will have to pay for it. It's relatively inexpensive. We'll look at a free tool after this. As you can see, I have the same side-by-side display we saw in that green screen demonstration. I can scroll up and down, and that's pretty much where the similarities end and the differences start. There's color syntax highlighting to highlight what the differences are. If it knows what the language is, you also get the language syntax highlighting. This window is also an editor. I can go in and make the changes here, either by typing, or I can move changes from one file to the other. So I use the arrow buttons there to move a change from one side to the other. I can move blocks of code. I can move code in either direction. It's a very quick way of doing merges. The software itself knows where the changes are. I can navigate between them, so if they're 2,000 lines apart, then bang, I can navigate 2,000 lines down straight to it rather than paging down inside an editor. If you don't want to pay the software, or you want to use different software, there's no restriction on what software you can use. We'll look at a piece of free software now. The next program is called WinMerge. It's open source. You can go away and change the software if you really don't like it. I'm looking at the same program again in here. Again, it's got syntax highlighting for both the code, but it's also got highlighting for the differences. And once again, you see those little arrow buttons that allow me to navigate between differences and move differences from one side to the other, so from one file to another, to effect the merge. There's a right-click menu available, as there was in WinDiff Pro, that gives me access to the functionality as well. It's light years away from using a compare on a green screen to make your changes. It's an order of magnitude faster, possibly, certainly 5 times faster than doing this using a green screen. So if you've got a prolonged merge going on, then I'd use one of these tools. If it's something you do fairly often, I'd use one of these tools. So how does that help me on the NonStop, you ask? We've seen these U-Boot window tools, but I'm stuck using T-Edit and the green screen thing. We can integrate these tools with Top, and we're going to look at how to do that right now. So in the Top global options, you can configure a compare tool, so any compare tool you like. Some of them are pre-configured in there. ExamDiff Pro is one that's pre-configured in there. And I'm going to use that right now to run a compare. So I'm going to configure ExamDiff Pro and then show you how that then integrates into the rest of top. So I'll just browse to where the actually I'll click ExamDiff Pro first, set what the defaults are. So these are command line options that ExamDiff Pro will use to run against the files that top is going to supply it with. I then need to browse and find the program file we're going to use. So let's go and navigate to ExamDiff Pro, and away we go. To believe me, there's an OK button at the bottom of the screen, and then I'm saying it's only going to compare 2 files at a time. And these other fields here are other command line options. We'll see an example of filling in that later on. So if you're running compare tool that's not one of the pre-configured options, you can still use top to do it, and we'll look at an example of that shortly. So let's go to demo Subvolume, and I'm actually typing in instead of navigating this time. Pick a couple of files to compare, and let's pick 2 files. Right click and choose the compare option off the dialog, and you see it's chosen the 2 files. I've got the option here of going with a read-only compare. You can also swap the files around if I decide I want like one on the left and one on the right. Top will then load up those 2 files, and I'll just move this so it's in the middle of the screen, and you can see there's the regular ExamDiff Pro display that we saw before. So exactly the same as we saw before. It hasn't managed to detect the language because we didn't have a file qualifier on there, but you can see that the file names are preserved from the NonStop. That was one of those flags that we passed it when we configured the ExamDiff Pro tool, and everything else works the same as it did before. So I can navigate between the differences. I can move code backwards and forwards. So this is working now on files it's uploaded from the NonStop, and I'm doing my merge changes just the way I would before. So if I go back down here, I did a save. If I go back down here, we'll check. I'll just save the second file, and you see it's just saved it on the NonStop. So when I do a save within the compare tool, it will then save it back onto the NonStop. Oh, something I didn't show. When I go into compare, if you're using these browse dialogues in top, this is more a general thing than necessarily related to compare, they actually work like a little file browser. So if you do the same thing in Windows, you'll notice you can right click on things, bring up the command menu, you can create new volumes, etc, etc. Well, you can do the same thing in the browse windows in top, which is quite nice. If you get partway through doing something and see a file that you meant to purge or rename, you can actually go in there and do that operation as you're going through. You might want to rename it before you compare it, as we are in this case. That's just something I'll mention while we're flying through this. Functionality that you might use, that we use a lot, is subvolume compares or folder compares in OSS. So you have 2 subvolumes of files that you want to compare. They might be on the same volume, as in this case. They might be corresponding subvolumes on different volumes, so you've got something partitioned or something arranged in that kind of way, or there might be the same subvolume, say $system.system, on different servers that you want to compare. And you see there's a compare to subvol command on the command menu that will let you compare directly with something on the same volume. Sorry, something with the same subvolume name on a different volume, and there's a compare to node as well. In this case, just to keep it easy, we're just going to compare 2 subvolumes on the same server. Here's my compare dialog. This is top functionality, it's not third party, so there's no more configuration to do, and they're sorted by their, and again you can resort by anything the usual top way, but they're sorted by their comparison status. So I've got them supported identical files at the top, and then things with different modified times, things with different sizes, and then the things that are only in one of the subvolumes. And that's in increasing orders of differentness, I guess. usual things. I can scroll up and down, I can right click. If I right click on one of the files, it brings up the whole file menu, so I can do the normal things I do with a file. I can edit it, I can view it, I can print it, I can email it, I can look at the properties of it. And that applies to both sides of the menu. If I want to copy a file across, same as doing a file compare, I just use a little blue button up there, copy a whole file across, or several files from one side to the other. If I double click on a pair of files, it will run the file compare we've been looking at earlier. Here we go, it's picked out those files, it's doing the download, and I've chosen a pair that are identical, so only the modification times were different there. And I have the option of clearing modification time as a difference, so if I'm comparing two subvolumes where I know someone copied the file without source date, then I can just ignore that and only look at things which are a different size and present or not present. So comparing two things which are a different size, hopefully they're different, and they are. See, one's using the secure version of sprintf and one isn't. And again, I can fix this up the way I was doing before. It's just another way of launching the file compare. For my 3 compare tool, I'm going to use a product called kdiff3. It's another free open source program. I don't use it that often, so I'll try and remember to switch back to ExamDiff Pro afterwards. So I'm going to have to go into my global options, change my global options so that we using this new program kdiff3. It's not one of the presets, so I need to configure everything manually. I've set top to compare 2 or 3 files with it. I need to browse to find the location of the file. It's a 32-bit program, so let's go and dig around there, find kdiff3. There it is. And I happen to know what the options are that I'm going to be using. I'm just putting in the aliasing options that will mean we'll have the Guardian or OSS friendly names displayed when we do the compare. So I'm just adding those options in now. And depending on what tool you use, the options in here will obviously vary. They're definitely specific to each tool. And we have these little substitute names we can put in there, and the names of the files will be substituted in at runtime. So press OK, which is just about visible this time, and we set the new compare tool. So I choose 3 files, you can choose compare. You can see we've got 3 files in that dialog now, and here's my 3-way compare. And I can again navigate around it, the same kind of tools that I could do before. I'm not going to do too much in here because I don't know my way around this tool so much, but 3-way compares are possible using top. So there you go, 3-way compare. Thanks for watching this short video. I hope it was useful. If you are using top, then go away and start using the compare functionality. If you're not using top yet, then please contact us and arrange a free trial.